Welcome. This is the Are You Ready for Single Touch Payroll webinar. Today, Modoras expert James Morris will guide you through what you need to know about STP, how the new regulations will affect your business operations, and what you need to know to be ready. We encourage you to submit your question to the chat feature. At the end of the presentation, James will be making time to answer them. I'd like now to introduce James Morris. With over 30 years experience, both as a chartered accountant and a tax advisor. James has a wealth of accounting and business knowledge at his disposal. As an astute accounting professional and trusted advisor, his calm and passionate demeanor has enabled him to consistently implement high-impact, low-risk solutions that support clients to achieve their financial goals and small businesses succeed profitability targets. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Stella. Just before we start, I would like to, just like any good seminar, put out the general advice warning. Basically, today we'll be talking about Single Touch Payroll. We'll be talking about it in general concepts that relate to STP. But if you require any specific advice in relation to your business, please contact the team here at Modoras Accounting. Okay, so today we're going to look at Single Touch Payroll. We're going to look at why Single Touch Payroll has been implemented by the government, what are the implications to business, what are the implications to employees, and what information the ATO is looking to, or what objectives they're looking to achieve out of this process. So STP is probably not a big change for business, but it sets probably the stage for where the ATO is going with general reporting. In some consider it probably one of the biggest single change to business reporting since the implementation of GST. The ATO is essentially looking to get real-time data from businesses in regards to wages paid, PAYG withholdings deducted from wages, and details of an employee's super guarantee information. So they've looked at the business environment that we're in, and essentially from their research they've established that 90% of businesses are using the internet for business banking transactions. There's 95% of businesses are connected to the internet. And so they're looking at how they can take advantage of this digital world that we're in to get some real-time data. They've looked at a couple of the processes that are happening around the world. For example, in the UK, they now have a process called Making Tax Digital, and they've actually implemented a process over there of not only reporting your GST, being VAT over there, but also reporting income, a business turnover on a regular basis, and also your business expenditure on a regular basis. And they're providing basically an ongoing estimate of your tax liability and streamlining your reporting processes. New Zealand is also heading the same way. So there's this general change across the globe towards real-time information. So what are the advantages that the ATO are looking at? Well, at this present point, there's this unknown amount of unpaid superannuation guarantee, employee superannuation guarantee that's out there at the moment. Some estimates have put it at something like about $2.8 billion worth of unpaid super out there. And the ATO have no real way of determining how that or how much that is and where it lies. So one of the focuses was to protect employee super guarantee. So STP requires a reporting of a year-to-date super information for an employee. Couple that with superannuation funds through the super stream and clearing houses, are now reporting to the ATO within 10 days of receipt of payment from an employer. Obviously now the ATO will have a opportunity to be able to match information about who's paid and who hasn't paid their superannuation obligations, and essentially they can take some early action to remedy non-payment. Also, from an employer perspective, it doesn't necessarily change your payroll that much. What it does do, I suppose, is reduce some of the paperwork that you have. It also does give the ATO some clear vision on what PAYG withholdings are payable, what superannuation is payable, and again, they can take some early action in regards to debt recovery and mitigation in unpaid taxes. And one of the other side benefits also is for employees. Basically, employees are going to be encouraged to get themselves a MyGov app, and on that MyGov app, they're going to be able to see their progressive year-to-date salary and taxes. And so for people who are on income-tested benefits, it's going to give some real-time information for them to be able to review their benefits, and also for the government to review their benefits. And as I said, there is some benefits to employers in regards to reducing reporting requirements. Okay, so what is Single Touch Payroll? It's essentially reporting what they call a pay event, which is when you pay wages to an employee. The electronic or the process is to report that payment, not so much the payment, beg your pardon, it's the year-to-date amount that you paid the employee, the year-to-date amount of PAYG withholdings, and the year-to-date amount superannuation guarantee related to those wages. So essentially you're reporting that on essentially your pay period process. So whether you're paying weekly, fortnightly, monthly, that information is getting progressively sent to the tax department. If you're in a business, an employer with more than 20 employees or 20 employees or more, you actually should already be on the STP system that kicked in on the 1st of July 2018. And essentially the major issue that we're looking at now are those all those other employees with employers with 19 or less employees. Essentially we're looking, or the ATO is requiring them to start on the STP process as of 1st of July 2019. Now there's a couple of little subgroups that we need to consider here in regards to employers. For example, and just looking at these start dates, so you could actually start reporting under STP from the 1st of April if you like, just to get the process clear within your business. So you can essentially start reporting effectively now. The government has just announced that they have extended this 1st of July 2019 deadline to the 30th of September 19. So they've given us sort of another transitional 3 months for people to get organised with their single touch payroll. If you want to commence reporting after September, you'll need to apply for a deferral of reporting, which again is not a difficult process, and there are some online forms that you can apply for deferral with. The other subgroup that we need to look at, there's another 2 subgroups there. There are concessions for employers with 1 to 4 employees. And essentially what the ATO research found was where we had businesses with 1 to 4 employees, they were generally using either, or essentially weren't necessarily using a software program, a payroll program to manage their wages. It was potentially a manual system. So there's concessions for the 1 to 4 employees where the ATO has made available some low-cost software options, which, from what I understand, is about $10 a month for some software programs. And they've also allowed the 1 to 4 employer to be able to lodge their STP or their wage information on a quarterly basis through a tax agent or BAS agent. Now, this option is going to be available until 30 June 2021. So essentially, the small employers will have 2 years in which they can do this quarterly reporting. And after that date, they will then have to have some type of STP-enabled software to be able to lodge their reporting. There's also another subgroup called closely held employees. Now, this relates to essentially family members in a family business, shareholders, directors of a company, trustee, beneficiaries of a trust. Essentially, this is the group where, for want of a better word, they're the business owners who may or may not be on a set wage. Their wage may be dependent on cash flow, dependent on when income is earned by the business. And so they've got a very irregular type wage structure, and they might be taking drawings through the year, and then at the end of the year, in consultation with the accountant, they determine what their wages will be for the year. So essentially what the government has sort of said, well, you know, they understand that this process exists. So essentially for closely held employees, you do not need to report them through the STP process. So if you have normal employees and what we call closely held employees, you need to report all your other employees on whatever process that you're running your STP on. But the closely held employees, you can report those wages at a later date. So essentially there's a couple of options that are available. So for employees, so essentially with closely held employees, what they've basically allowed is where we have employers with less than 19, you can do that reporting. Essentially, you don't need to report in the 19 and 20 financial year. So the year ending 30 June 2020, you don't actually have to report closely held employees. You have to report all other wages. And essentially what you need to do is lodge essentially the old payment summary for your closely held employees by the due date of the business tax return. Once we get past 1st of July 2020, you'll at least have to report your closely held employees on a quarterly basis. So essentially you'll need to make a reasonable estimate of what their wages are going to be, and then include that with your STP process. And that estimate can be done one of three ways. You can actually look at the actual withdrawals that you've had through the period. You can just take 25% of what last year's wages were, or you can vary that amount as long as you're within 15% of what the ultimate salary ends up being for the current year. So it's very similar to the way PAYG instalments can be calculated and varied. So the quarterly reporting, you have up until the due date of the income tax return to finalise what the actual wages are going to be for that year. So there's a bit of concession there for these closely held employees. Where you have 20 or more employees, it's a similar process, but you only have up until the 30th September to finalise the information. So under 19 employees, you can have up until the due date of your tax return, but for 20 or more employees, you need to do that before 30th September. Okay, so each time you pay an employee, you'll also be sending the employee's wage information, PAYG, super to the ATO. Okay, so these are year-to-date amounts. So they're not the amount of that particular pay, but it's the year-to-date amount. And the last point there is, yes, one of the key things that we'll talk about today is what are the things that you need to do. And one of the things that you'll need to do is to make sure your current software is STP enabled. Okay, so let's just look at this overview of what STP is about. So each time you have what they call a pay event, which is where you've either paid wages, withheld tax, or superannuation guarantee arises, you need to report that to the ATO. This is done through what they call, and again, sorry, apologies for the acronym all the time, but this is done through SBR, which is the Standard Business Reporting System that the ATO, or should I say the government overall, has developed, where information is passed to government departments, and it's always within the same format, same characteristics, so that any government department can readily read it. So that's why we need specific software to be able to transfer this information, because it has to be within this standard business reporting process. So first of all, you need to ask the question, how will I be reporting? A lot of the current software programs, such as Xero, MyOb, QuickBooks, that sort of thing, are all SBR, STP enabled, and it's just a matter of configuring your software. So from the perspective of, well, what changes, if you have this software that it's been enabled, really you'll just process your payroll exactly the same. There's no interruption in the process that you do. It just requires one additional button press at the end of completing your payroll. And so that was one of the concepts that the ATO wanted to bring forward into this process. Was they didn't want to change the way employers did their payroll. They didn't want to add extra reporting burdens onto an employer. They wanted to just extract the information as you did it. And so that was one of their goals, was to not add any further reporting onto employers. They just wanted to extract the data that was already there. You need to, with those softwares, the Xeros, the MyObs, the QuickBooks, you do need to ensure that it is correctly configured, and that your employees and your wage classifications within the software are configured correctly. There is a lot of information put out by the software providers about how to do that, but please feel free to give us a call here at the office, and we can provide any assistance with regards to setting up your software. The third, or probably the second way in which to provide information is through, for example, if you already use a payroll provider, or through your tax agent or a BAS agent, they can provide lodgement services as well for your payroll. And as I said earlier, there's specific low-cost software that's available. So once you've sort of looked at your, if you're currently on a Xero or currently on a MyOb, you need to sort of look and ensure that you understand how you need to ensure that the correct reporting and processes are put in place within your business to ensure that the correct information is being sent to the ATO. So the question is, who is authorised to report? Who will be sending the report to the ATO? Who's the ATO going to contact if there's issues? Who's going to be answering the queries? Who will be checking the data to ensure that it's being sent correctly? So while the ATO, most businesses have access to what we call the business portal. You can't lodge through the portal, but you can go into the business portal to review your lodgement. So one of the processes that businesses will need to look at as part of their, I suppose, quality control is getting access to the business portal, going in there and checking that the ATO have received your reports, received your STP reports as you've lodged them from your payroll software. As the slide shows, the employers reporting your wages, superannuation contributions will be reported from your super fund. And then probably the next big difference is that you won't actually produce payment summaries at the end of the year. All of this information will be available to employees on the MyGov site. And also the MyGov site will now have the process where new employees can actually complete tax file number declarations and super standard choice forms online through the MyGov portal. So it's, again, looking to take that paperwork shuffle off the employer and put it through this, this digital process. And at the end of the year, no requirement to lodge a payment summary. And for those people who have been around wages for a long time, have just got used to calling them payment summaries. They used to be group certificates. They're now going to be called income summaries. So that's another term you need to get used to. So an employee can go onto his MyGov site and get an income summary of what he's received through the year. And there's no requirement on the employer to provide an income summary. So as you can see, the ATO are going to have a lot of information on a real-time basis for them to make assessments about, particularly, as I said earlier, unpaid super. So you can expect a lot of compliance in the superannuation guarantee area as they try and establish what this level of unpaid superannuation is. Okay, so let's have a look at the effects of this single touch payroll. It's basically going to affect pretty much everyone within the, I suppose, business circle, government through to employers, through to the business owners. It's all designed around this digital process. So from an employer's perspective, nothing really has changed. So you still have all the requirements that you have under employment law. So the requirement to provide pay slips, the requirement to have an appropriate payroll system, pay in accordance with wards, pay your super via the super stream. Nothing in that regards has changed, and there's no additional obligations there. It's just as you do your payroll, you need to remit this information to the ATO. Once we get to 1st of January 2020, the ATO will now then start to pre-print on your business activity statements or your instalment activity statements your wage information at W1 and your PAYG withholdings at W2. So that will automatically be on your activity statements. And so there'll be no need to include that on your statements. So that's one of the key things is just to remember, nothing has changed in your obligations to your employee in regards to pay slips, conditions, super, all of that remains the same. This is just, as I said earlier, it's just one simple button press after you've completed the payroll for the day or week or whatever period that you're looking at. So let's just look at some quick questions that have been very common in my discussions with clients. Just looking at the dates, which we talked about earlier, 20 or more employees have been under STP since the 1st of July 2018. And then what we're looking at now is employers with less than 19 employees as of the 1st of July 19. And as I said, there's a few concessions now. So you need to get organised by the deadline's pushed out to 30 September. You need to be at least doing your first reporting. And then we've also got some exceptions there for the 1 to 4 employees and the closely held employees. Which employees do you include? Well, essentially, it's everybody. There's no employees that you have that are excluded. When we look at the third question there, where we talk about exclusions, this is sort of saying, for example, if I was a 20 or more employee person who I had to start on the 1st of July, I wouldn't have included wages of people who had ceased before 1st of April, and with casual employees if they did not work in March. Now they relate mainly to the 20 or more employees, so don't really need to concern yourself with those. The independent contractors, there's no requirement at this point to put subcontractors who are on voluntary agreements through this process, but I do expect that will change in the future. And obviously staff provided by a third-party labour hire organisation, they will be doing their own STP. You're basically not paying wages to those staff provided. you're actually paying a fee to the labour hire organisation. So it's the labour hire organisation that has the STP considerations. So how often do you report? Well, as I said, it's as you have a pay event. So if you pay on a weekly basis, you'll effectively be sending a report to the ATO every week. If you pay your wages on a fortnightly basis or monthly basis, the reporting will be as per your pay. There's also, if you do an ad hoc pay or an unscheduled pay, that would also need to be reported as well. There are some limited exceptions, exemptions or deferrals for lodging, and generally those reports or those applications can be found online on the ATO website, and also we can organise those for you if required. Essentially, we're talking about no internet access or major issues, fire, flood, that sort of thing. If you make a mistake on your single touch payroll, there's generally two streams of fixing something. If it's for an employee who will no longer be on your payroll, so someone who's left, you need to go back and amend that last payroll. But if it's someone who is current employees, you just make an adjustment in the next reporting process through your payroll system. So as you correct, because the key thing to understand is that what you're reporting is the year-to-date numbers. So if you've made a correction to someone's pay, say for last week, you didn't include something, you've adjusted it. When you lodge this week's pay, it's going to have that information in the year-to-date number. So that year-to-date number will just automatically contain the amendment. There are some failure to, with all these reporting systems, there are failure to lodge penalties. In the first year of what they call compulsory reporting, they basically, the ATO has come out and said that there will be no penalties lodged in the first year of STP. But again, as with other processes that the ATO have implemented, that won't be the case in the following years. Essentially, we've touched on this before. What don't I have to do in the future if I report by a single touch payroll? And it's essentially the payment summaries. No payment summaries will need to be issued. Employees will gather that through their MyGov app. And so again, it's employees are essentially going to have to be encouraged to go onto the MyGov app to, one, do their TFN applications, their superannuation choice forms, and in addition to that, they'll receive their progressive income summaries. So as I said, from the ATO, they've provided some transitional concessions to the 1 to 4 employers. And that essentially will mean that they'll get that quarterly reporting for 2 years rather than having to start now. And in addition to that, as I said, they've given until the 30th September to essentially get your STP reporting process in order. No penalties in the first year for mistakes or late reports. And as I said, there are exemptions there for employers experiencing hardship in or in other areas of internet connections. So what do we need to do to get ready for STP? The key thing is to review your current payroll process. So if you're currently using a software package to produce your payroll, it's going to be a very simple process to ensure that it's STP enabled. There is a catch there, obviously. It has to be probably the latest version of software. So if you, for example, own an MYOB program that hasn't been updated for 10 odd years, then likelihood it won't be STP enabled. So you may need to upgrade software, you may need to look at other options if you don't want to upgrade software. So if you fall into one of the concessions for the 1 to 4 employees, you might be able to use the quarterly reporting via a tax agent or a BAS agent. But if you're on an online package such as the online MyOb or Xero or QuickBooks, that's not a difficult process to ensure that you're ready to go and STE enabled. So one of the key things is you need to have a chat with your accountant or to determine what it is that you need to do before 30 June or 1st of July to ensure that you're STP. We'll be talking and sending out information over the next 2 months or so, just to prompt people to keep looking at this process and ensure that their software and such is up to date. Okay, we're at a process now where if you have any questions, feel free to post them on. I should have mentioned this early in the presentation, that you do have the capacity there to lodge a question. And unfortunately, at this juncture, I'm just having some IT issues here. I can't see if there's been any questions lodged. So I just, if Emily or Stella, if you can let me know if there's any questions there, we can have a look at those.
Hi, so we have a question from Laura Fowler. She's asking, oh, I'm sorry, it's from Dorina Kakamo. Hello, thank you for joining us today. Her question is, when is the rollout of the TFN December and Superform completion via MyGov? Is it July 1st?
Look, I would have to double check on that, but I'm very confident that that's essentially there now, I believe. I was talking to someone from the ATO the other day, and I do believe that the MyGov is, I must confess I haven't been into the MyGov app at this point. I believe it's there.
All right, thank you. Oh, she says she'll check it out. Thank you, Dorina. Also, again, we can continue this conversation with your accountant to review your payroll process. Lara Fowler, yes, this webinar will run from 30 to 45 minutes, and I see here that you're still with us. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? In the meantime, we'd also like to inform everyone that we have upcoming events. So with the commitment to empowering you to make well-informed financial decisions, in the chat, you will find our upcoming events. So feel free to check it out and visit our website. Anything else, James?
Yeah, look, I'll just, there's a couple of things I'd just like to run through here. With, like at Modoras, basically we provide a process here where we can help you explore what more is possible. And we have an integrated service here where we talk about, where we can cover, you know, your tax accounting, self-managed super funds, business advisory and wealth management. And one of the key concepts is looking to make better business decisions or understand the financial impact of decisions before you make them. And myself and Peter Hetherington are quite open for you to come in and have a chat with us over a coffee, just to discuss how we can help you with those processes. Also, we have our financial planners here who have a wealth of experience with in financial planning, can help manage and build your wealth. And again, if you want to feel free to come in and have a coffee with them to discuss what they could do and help you with your to build and protect your wealth. We have a number of seminars coming up in the future. On the 15th of May, we have a seminar in regard, or webinar in regard of end of financial year strategies. And in addition to that, we also have a what we call Beyond the Noise, which is Peter Thornhill providing a seminar in regards to investment wisdom, popular investment wisdom. which will be quite timely because it's just after the election, so we'll know what government policies we're dealing with, in particular, whether we've got franking credits in super funds or not. So that'll be quite timely there. As I described earlier, we're a multifaceted firm here, able to help you with consulting, accounting and tax, business advisory, wealth management. So feel free to contact us to discuss any of those. Look, that's all I had for today. Feel free to send me an email if you've got some specific. And as I said, one of the key factors is to look at your payroll system and work out how it fits into STP. It's not a difficult process, and it's not designed to be difficult. The ATO have gone, I suppose, to great efforts to make sure it's not another reporting process. It's just a matter of extracting information out of your existing program. So thank you very much for today. And as I said, if you require any further information, please feel free to make contact with us. Thank you very much.
So thank you, James, and thank you everyone for all your attention today. Keep an eye on your emails. We'll be in touch very soon. Have a good day.